Hello, welcome to the fifth episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this episode, I'd like to address the so-called law of cause and effect, and basically show that cause and effect is just one construct inside of infinity. And it serves a very important purpose, but it is not a universal law and it can be broken and bent. And here I'm trying to go beyond many of the teachings, especially that of karma and all of the other laws that are advocating for balance, meaning that you have to experience exactly the opposite of what you put out, or that whatever you give to the universe is what you get back. Those ideas are valid. Of course, in infinity, everything is valid. But there is a strategy on how infinity explores itself, and cause and effect is a crucial foundation for infinity to experience itself. Now, you see, I'll give you an example of why cause and effect are not a universal law, and this is actually very intuitive. Every time you dream, you violate that law, because in your dream there are things that happen where you jump from one scene to another, where there's a completely discontinuity between what you're experiencing here and then what happens a minute later or a second later. So, and your dreams are no less real than reality. I mean, in infinity, nothing is more real than anything else. Everything is sort of equal. Your dreams are real. This reality is real. The astral plane is real. The spiritual realm is real. There's nothing outside of reality, so to speak. In infinity, everything is reality. But there are different hierarchies, and hierarchies, I mean that in how should I say this? The order in which infinity explores itself, that form of hierarchies. Now, I'm going to actually explain this very metaphorically because it mirrors the development of a child. For instance, when you have a 1.5 or 2-year-old child, how you raise them is you give them black and white instructions. For instance, you have a road and you have cars. And what do you say to your 2-year-old? And here's the sidewalk. You have your little 2-year-old here. You tell them, never go on the road. Always walk on the sidewalk. Never, always. Very extreme, very dualistic. And you could mirror this as good versus evil, right versus wrong, true versus false. It's very clear-cut. There's no room for any discussion. You cannot be on the road and you have to be on the sidewalk. And so your 2-year-old basically then acquires the reflex of staying on the sidewalk, and then you'll see 2-year-olds, for instance, where the sidewalk ends, so to speak, and there's only the road, and you'll see them standing there and kind of not knowing what to do, being kind of lost because they want to go forward, but they can't, and it's really funny to see sometimes, these 2-year-olds that are torn between what their parents told them and the impulse to disobey, which is, of course, something that is inherent in every child. And then as they mature, as they grow older, like 4 or 5 years old, or even a little bit older, like 7 to 8, then these rules are starting to be bent and being a little bit tweaked and to be more flexible. So especially at age like 7 or 8, they start asking questions like why? Why can't I be on the road? Why must I be on the sidewalk? Or even at younger ages like 4 or 5. You can already explain this to a 2-year-old, but it's always with this never always kind of dichotomy, because they don't understand subtleties and exceptions to the rule. But once they're a little older, like 3, 4, 5, you can start to say, okay, why? Because cars can hurt you. And so what about crossing the road or being on the road when there is no car? Okay, you can do that as well. What about if there is a pedestrian crossing path and there is like a red light? Red light and, well, green for you to cross. Okay, you can do that. How about when, and this is, as you advance in age, then it gets even more subtle. Like, for instance, what about when I know that I have enough time to cross because the car is going at a certain speed and I know that I'm going to get to the other side before the car gets there? Okay, you can do that as well. But you can see that this never always and always stay on the sidewalk is like a foundation that you set for your rule, which is absolute. And then you build exceptions on top of them that are more and more sophisticated as time goes by, and you add little details to it. And so here it's relativism, you can say, or subtleties. I don't even know if that's spelled correctly. Subtleties, exceptions, whatever. But it's still set on this or on top of this one unbreakable rule, which now, if you take the whole thing into consideration, the rule, it would seem, is meaningless, except it isn't, because everything else is built on top of it. And so you see, you cannot do it the other way around. You cannot tell a 2-year-old, do whatever you want, and then try to build subtleties on top of pure freedom. Like, you can be on the street whenever you want, but it's better to not be on the street when there are cars. I mean, it's just, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You first build a very, very strict and clear rule, and then you build exceptions on top of it. And if you look at the model of the universe, you could say that all of these laws, you could say that these are, it's the same thing. It's like kind of like you have very strict and deterministic rules in physics, and then chemistry is kind of like, some exceptions to the rule, and then biology, even bigger exceptions. Because, I mean, think about it. I mean, the way you move right now, for instance, if you move your hand around, it's kind of magical the way you can do that. There's nothing in physics, there's no object, inanimate object like a ball or something that can move like your hand. It's impossible. It's impossible. Even the rules of chemistry fall short of explaining how you can move your hands. But the laws of biology, however, can. But they're still built on top of physics, and they're nevertheless, though, it looks like you're violating physics. Like just the mere fact that you can stand up, for instance, and you don't fall down to the ground, or you're countering the laws of gravity as you walk, for instance, with your muscles and all that. It's extremely sophisticated exceptions to a basic rule, like gravity. You could say gravity is like the basic, absolute basic, thing of the universe. Like it's this never always. So it's like the universe when it's 2 years old. And then you have all kinds of, exceptions built on top of those. So what am I getting into here? here's how I would explain this cause and effect. Here is basically what I exemplify as the kind of the tunnel of all possibles. So here you have below the quantum level where it's pure energy and pure potential, and it's everything. Everything, pure potential, infinity, but everything in a very chaotic state where it doesn't have any form. Then you have sort of universes here that are built with certain restrictive rules which kind of compress pure potential, compress it into something where there is, like you could say that here it's the world of the bubble of cause and effect. And then on the other side here you also have infinity and everything. But this time not as pure potential, but everything with a form. Except everything with a form that can't necessarily experience itself because it's not linked with a cause and effect. And then you have this kind of bridge here. Our world is kind of a bridge between pure potential, which doesn't have a form, and pure potential, and pure everything that has a form. So pure potential. Let's say this is the world of pure everything, which doesn't have a form, and this is pure everything, which has a form. And what this means is here you could have you with just one eye in the middle of your forehead and another eye sticking out of your ass, for instance, and your penis instead of your big toe, and whatever. I mean, you can advance anything. All of the absurd things that you could imagine are here, because in infinity, of course, everything exists. But it's very difficult for those things to experience themselves, because there's just no way to build a story from that and a continuous experience, which is the purpose of this kind of bubble, this kind of cause and effect bubble. These kind of laws that the universe sets for itself are actually the bridge between everything, but which is not attached to, which basically is outside of, cannot be bridged, cannot be experienced unless it first goes through this bubble. So what I mean is that from our perspective here, we can send thoughts, just like I did. You can create a thought which violates cause and effect, or you can dream, for instance. Or you can say anything that's absurd, and it's almost as if you're sending energy here, and there's a little lightning and a little rod of lightning of a little experience that happens of you, or any absurd idea that you have that sort of pops into existence and experiences itself, because you're sending it energy from your present, thanks to these limiting rules which allow you to have that thought and to sort of activate or enable the experience of infinity. So it's kind of a sorting strategy for infinity to experience itself. Without cause and effect first, it cannot experience all of the rest. And so when you hear any channelers, ETs, or whatever saying that cause and effect are in universal rules, they are only universal rules insofar as for all of the beings. And so if you're watching this, it's probably that you're also kind of open to the fact that there is no cause and effect, but knowing that is not going to make you kill someone and say, oh, great, and I don't have to suffer the consequences and I don't have to go to prison. You see, you can get rid of those rules only when you've grown out of them and you understand that you can still behave responsibly even without these to be there. And it's the same for a child. It knows that it shouldn't cross the street, and it doesn't need these kind of threats or whatever. It doesn't need the threat of a parent, for instance, and punishment for not going on the street, because it's sort of internalized the reasons for them. And cause and effect has its reasons. And once you understand the reasons for cause and effect to have been created as a bridge between pure everything with no form and pure everything with form, then you can sort of get rid of those, but nevertheless act responsibly on top of those, and build something nice for infinity to experience itself again, and not, just behave irresponsibly and be the cause for the end of experience. Because ultimately, infinity just wants to experience itself fully. What I've said in the past also is that infinity is almost like a puzzle, like one of those pieces of puzzle that solves itself everywhere at the same time. Oh, I'm so bad at drawing. Jesus. So it's like a puzzle which solves itself here and it solves itself here. And once it's solved a little piece in one place, it provides information in another place and helps that solve itself, and vice versa. And it's the same as building a puzzle, basically. When you've finished building when you have a 1,000-piece puzzle and you've built like 10 or 20 pieces in one part of the puzzle, then it helps you build all the rest. And so you see, it's almost as if you're helping solve all of the absurd experiences in infinity, and that in turn helps you become a better creator by allowing you more freedoms, and bending the cause and effect a little more, so you have more imagination and you can create even more. So you see, it's like 2,500 years ago, people didn't have the kind of imagination that we have today, and the laws of cause and effect were actually much more brutal in a way to them than they are today. I mean, today we can behave quite irresponsibly in many ways, even though it's going to come to roast, in terms of climate change and everything. But if you think about it, there's just so many ways that you can solve or bypass this cause and effect rules today. For instance, if 2,500 years ago, if you have a drought or a bad year for cultivating your apples, you have rotten apples or whatever, you die basically, because if there's nobody around, if there's no way that if all of the people around you have also failed crops, then cause and effect, you just die immediately. In today's world, you can ship crops from half across the world, and compensate for your losses. There's just so many ways to sort of dilute this effect of direct cause and effect that affects you directly, and it's just so much more complex as well. And so again, I think this is all part of the plan. Basically, you create exceptions and more exceptions to the rule, and that allows you more freedom to experience, but always in a way which doesn't break this bridge. In the previous video, I was talking about this bridge between the third and fourth dimension. Fourth dimension, I think it's the astral. People call it the astral plane, and from what I've heard, basically in that kind of plane, you can create things and they exist so long as you give them your attention. So it's kind of like the dream world in a way. And then 5D is even something else. And all of those basically are interlinked. And the whole point is for creating a bridge between pure freedom but without form and pure freedom with a form, and to have infinity experience everything, which will never happen actually. Infinity will always chase itself into infinity, but the point is, this bubble has to keep growing and expanding. It has already experienced so many things within biology, so many things within chemistry. It needs to go further and further and further out, and this is a bubble of experience basically. This is the bubble of experience, and this is the bubble of being. And this is also being. So, you could say that the universe is just one bolt of lightning that goes from being to being, and in the middle, it has an experience. But not any experience. I mean, the laws of cause and effect have been there for a reason, in order to have that experience, to know where to start in infinity. So I hope I was clear. Sorry for all the hiccups. I mean, again, this is a brainstorm, so I don't prepare. I have a topic that pops into my head, and I feel guided to sort of speak about it because somebody needs to hear it, I guess, or maybe I need to hear it myself, because this is an exercise where I learn myself by saying these things. Sometimes I don't know what I say in advance, so I'm even surprised by the things that I come up with. And so I hope this help you put all this cause and effect into perspective, to better perspective, to not see it as, again, as a universal law, but as training wheels on the side of a bicycle, so that you don't fall over when you first ride on your bike. It allows for creating the bridge between us and a world where we can experience freely without cause and effect. Perhaps, again, if you want to give this a form of how it would work, this bridge, think about the movie Matrix. And there's so many also Japanese anime that look at a future VR where you actually are immersed in a virtual reality where your five senses are captive of that reality. And of course, in a computer simulation, you have 100% freedom to do whatever the hell you want, and there is no cause and effect, because the cause and effect are basically whatever you tell that computer are the rules, and if there are no rules, you can actually just create whatever you want at a whim, just like in the movie Matrix, where they have this empty program which is all white, and then you can materialize whatever you want inside. But the point is, the only reason you can do that is because you have done that from a 3D reality, which has cause and effect, and then you can violate the rules from within. And so that's the bridge. It's the bridge. Now, of course, this is one particular form for that bridge. Maybe we'll have another form. Maybe we'll have a form. The form that we'll come up with is to understand quantum everything and potential to such an extent that we can materialize pure potential and skip all of this, and just have this pure energy be molded and appear and materialize as whatever we want in our reality in 3D. So it's as if in 3D you create a little bubble a little space inside your room, for instance, where the laws of all of the above don't apply, and where you can skip that and just materialize whatever you want, like, I don't know, food or a computer or whatever the hell you want. A gun, hopefully not. And if you want to materialize a gun, it means that you probably don't understand infinity and the reason for all of the rules in place and the fact that infinity wants to explore itself. And so if you use that kind of information to materialize things that would hamper or cause delay or an obstacle for infinity and this bubble to grow in terms of experience, basically if you're hindering, I think that's probably the biggest universal rule. The only universal rule is if you are an obstacle for infinity to experience itself, if you're a hindrance, if whatever you do would threaten the ability for infinity to experience itself, then you will return to a level of reality somewhere else. So your consciousness basically will leave your body, or you reincarnate on another planet or whatever, to internalize this cause and effect more and more in order for you to understand this principle, the fact that it's all about experience. And if you don't allow infinity to experience itself to the utmost, and everything that you do is in that with that objective in mind, then you will be retrograded, or you'll be, your soul will be reincarnated to whatever level of consciousness that you have, and you'll still be bound by the cause and effect, karma, everything will still apply to you. However, if you're in the business of allowing infinity to experience even further and trying to find what is the best form, what is the best solution for bridging the gap between 3D and 4D, and for allowing more and more experiences, then you're doing exactly what infinity, God, source, or whatever wants in the end. That's all it wants. It just wants to experience itself more and more, and to know itself more and more. And it's respecting and in understanding why it came up with this strategy of cause and effect and all that karma and everything, and you building on top of it, transcending it. Transcendence, by the way, transcendence, I really like that word, because transcendence does not mean destruction. It doesn't mean that you ditch something. It doesn't mean that something is no longer valid. It means that you've integrated something, like certain rules, and then you've understood everything, and then you build something on top, something new. Transcendence is not destroying the old or thinking that it's no longer relevant. It's just, putting it into context and finding something new to build on top of it, which fits very nicely. So I've given you a couple of examples of forms, the forms that we could give this bridge between 3D and 4D, and the link between 3D and 4D, the fact that we can link it. So you could imagine that in the 3D world, we keep our physical bodies. We just learn to be much more responsible in terms of how we treat the environment. And we perfect we really go to the utmost in understanding all of these laws that are built on top of their physics, chemistry, and biology to the utmost, so that we have a perfect self-conscious control over the environment. It's like almost an ecosystem which reaches self-awareness and is so balanced that it can just reproduce itself stably throughout time, protect itself against asteroids, protect itself against natural disasters, protect itself against anything you can throw at it. And then out of sheer boredom, which is of course what would happen to us if we would just repeat each year everything, because we've reached absolute perfection and understanding of the 3D realm, like how everything works, how plants are grown, how to grow them optimally and everything. Once you've understood everything perfectly, I'm not saying that's possible, but just imagine that for a second it is, then we'd be bored stiff. And so inevitably we'd find ways to break out of that and experience something new, be it via plugging our brains into a VR simulation to have new experiences and whatever, or to tweak this, or to manifest things with our thoughts, thanks to harnessing pure potential, pure quantum potential, which before it goes through all of these layers, you can manifest something out of it. You name it, basically, either bending the rules from within, or just stabilizing the rules and then building a bridge which is virtual. There are many ways that you can go about this. The point is experience, experience, experience. From the point of infinity, it doesn't matter if you experience it in a VR setting where your brain is and your five senses are captured inside a computer, or if you experience it in 3D via this quantum manifestation or manipulation of pure energy. For infinity, it's absolutely the same. Because it's the experience that matters. If the feelings, the emotions, if you've experienced it as if it were true, or as if it was real, then for infinity it's all good, it's fine. Which is why, incidentally, I believe that you could even burn karma by crying in front of a movie and feeling a certain emotion, for instance, of empathy towards a victim, or empathy towards a bad guy, or being outraged, or being whatever you want. Even playing a video game, if you are killed by someone in a video game and you really 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 pissed off, for instance, if your World of Warcraft avatar is dead and now you have to start from the beginning, and you feel that pain as if you died yourself, then it's almost as if you don't need to repay the karma of you killing someone 500 years ago by actually dying. You can let your avatar die for you in World of Warcraft, and then that deletes the karma, because it's all about feelings, emotions, and learning cause and effect, and being more responsible in or becoming responsible in allowing infinity to experience itself more and more and more and more. If you get it, there's no reason why karma or all of these laws should apply to you, especially not in this very stringent way where you have to experience everything in the physical. Perhaps you can experience it in your dreams. Perhaps you can experience it watching a movie or playing a video game. To the universe, or to infinity, to the source, it's all the same. All that matters is it genuine? Did you really learn from that experience? Did you really feel it as if it were real? And does that enable you to experience more, to create more, to be more creative? So I think I'll stop here. A lot to process again. I hope it was clear. I hope it was interesting, and feel free to comment. And let's see what I'm guided to share next.